It's Rut and River.
Yes.
Correct.
R-U-T.
I rest my beard hair on it.
And then you know you're there.
Like a nice, gentle little pillow for my beard.
Right.
And then I'm all up in it.
Oh.
I'm like Kobe beef for sharks.
Can I ask you, what made you guys call me up about, well, this?
That's what tickles our fancy.
Exactly. Okay.
I thought the Rocky Mountains would be rockier.
John Denver is not accurate.
Man.
A guy like you, who has absolutely no clue, and I can hear it in your voice, that, I mean, you're a blank canvas. I mean, I just start with you like from scratch.
You're going to tell me, a grown man, you're telling me what lure to use and how to fish?
You guys didn't snap your whopper plopper off either, though.
Sorry, I blew up over there. And welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Rut and River Pursuit podcast, your home of all things epic in the outdoors. We're here around the Sonic Campfire tonight. There it was. I knew somebody's going to do it. So, table seems a little smaller tonight, but let's go around it. Who I got with me tonight?
I'm Steve. And I'm Dave.
And I'm Ryan. See how quick that went?
Oh, that went real quick.
This is a quaint little thing we're going to have.
It is.
But you know what? You guys
What's that, bud?
are in for a treat tonight.
Yeah.
Buddy, I have been looking forward to this podcast since we got a little bit of a casting demonstration at the Great American Outdoor Show last year.
Yeah. It was more of a casting schooling.
It took us to school.
And for the record, if I have the opportunity, I need to participate in the casting school again this year for a little bit of redemption because I put up a pitiful performance last year. But where I'm going with this is, on the line with us tonight is our good friend that we met last year at the Great American Outdoor Show. I like to think of him as a little bit of a professional fishing insider.
Oh, yeah.
It's our good buddy, Mike Paone. Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How you guys doing?
Hey, bud.
Hey, Mike.
How's things going, Mike?
Oh, man, let me tell you what. We are at a brisk 63 degrees here.
Where is here? Because we are not having 63 degrees to our listeners.
Here right now at this time is in like the Tampa Bay area of Florida. So it'd be like sort of the West Coast and the central West Coast.
Sounds rough.
You poor fella.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I know. Well, we went through a bit. You got that big storm coming through, so it rained like heck today. We had tornadoes and everything. I thought I was in Kansas.
Well, Mike, I've been to Tampa or in the area, I guess, a few times. It's funny. You guys sound a lot like New Yorkers. It's weird.
I didn't know there was two of me, but I'll start to go on a diet just because of that. But when you say use guys, what do you mean by that?
Well, you're from the Tampa area. Just
I'm from. I originally come from New York. Yes, I come from the Bronx, and then I moved to the island. And we had some fantastic fishing on the island. You got your striper run. We have wheat fish. I mean, there's just tautog. There's your blackfish, whatever you want to call them, up your way.
Don't you guys call them at something else, the fluke, which we call them flounder?
Well, we have fluke and flounder. They have both. Down here in Florida, they have a flounder also. That's a southern flounder. You can tell because when you catch him, he's got sunglasses on.
See, somehow I knew there was a punchline coming on that as soon as you said southern flounder.
Yes. But no, they are. No, seriously, they are a southern flounder. They got pretty cool markings on them. They got these little round circle. They look like little starbursts on them. If you guys know how to use a computer, you can always type that in there, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
I'll talk to my son after the show and see if he could do that. Look that up for me.
That's it. I'll tell you what, kids are good for that. They know how to do stuff we just can't handle. You got to keep them around.
Mike, whenever somebody says I lived on the island, we have to stop. I know you're in Florida now, and we're going to get to inshore saltwater fishing. But when you say you lived on the island, is there a better place on the East Coast to live than Long Island for saltwater fishing?
Well, I'll tell you, Long Island just opened up a whole different array of fishing for me because, in the Bronx, it's a little different to fish. It's not all, sewer holes and stuff like that. There is actually little places you can fish and learn how to fish in there. And
Really?
you can get on a boat and you can, yes, sir, I'm telling you. But when you get out to the island, you can surf fish. Which is really great because you can hit all of those runs. You'll get like a bluefish run, you'll have the the bass run, stripers, and then you'll get like I said, the weak fish run, and they could all be running on the same beach, and
wow.
You can watch them. There's days you can watch them running through the surf, and basically you can cast spoons out to them, jigs. There's a whole bunch. If you want to live bait, you can live bait, whatever you want to do. And you could just have a ball. If they're there and they're going to hang out, you got a couple hours of good fishing. And then you go around to some of the rocky jetties, and that's where you'll end up catching your tautog.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then we had some ponds. I mean, we had some trout. We used to fly fish for trout. And we would, do some bass fishing. That caught my first bass on Long Island.
Really?
Right on the island.
Yes, right on the island.
You do some of that surf fishing and stuff from like Rockaway?
I've done. In fact, I used to work really close to Rockaway, so we used to just pack a couple surf rods with us, and I can't say we were not working at the time we were catching fish, but sometimes when you're driving and you see water and you see some disturbance on the water, you just have to get out and figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Your
boss would understand.
Investigative casting. Is that what we call it?
Well, it's field testing. It's all part of field testing.
There
yes.
we go.
Yeah. I do a lot of that now. I field test a lot of things. Yeah. So, and then I just got to the point where I said, I really enjoy, and I hunt too. I'm a hunter too. So I did the same thing like you guys did. When hunting season came around, we did bow, we did shotgun, we, rifle. Depends on where we are because, like in the Catskills, you had to use shotgun when we lived there. I don't know if they changed that law yet. But we were always big bow hunters. That was our thing. We liked to bow hunt. And on Long Island, you can actually bow hunt. I don't know if there's any land left to do that now. But there were
places. Yeah, there were places to archery hunt on Long Island.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I would have never guessed that.
The deer are huge. They're absolutely huge. Yes.
It's like chasing deer right outside of Philly that Kyle does. It's the same idea.
Huh.
These are urban deer.
Wow.
Yeah. They're big and they're mean.
They're mean.
And they are, and they're very smart. They know to stay in the thickets. The big ones, they'll stay in the thickets, and they're very hard to hunt. Especially with a bow. That you got to have a clear lane to get a good shot, and we were all for that. We were all for the one shot, one kill type deal. We didn't want nothing suffering, and everything we killed, we ate. So it was good. It was a great experience, I have to say. And then I moved down here and I became friends with a bunch of Southern boys, and they just taught me a whole nother different way of doing things, because you always hear that deal, well, we don't do it like that, or that's the way you guys did it up north, we do it down. But I tell you what, it's all basically the same, and you just have to add a little thing. Down here we do things just a little bit different than I would have done up north. Like we don't need an ice auger down here ever. Never. Yeah. You don't need 20 below boots or any of that stuff. In fact, you can hunt in shorts if you don't mind ticks.
Oh man.
Yeah. That was the strangest. There's the strangest hunt I ever did was we went hog hunting, and we did it with pistols, which was cool in itself. And we were in shorts. And
wow.
Yeah.
Now, do they do that with dogs down there, or? Or how's
You
that?
can do. There's a few different ways. If you run the dogs are pretty cool. They'll run into the woods. They'll actually grab a pig by their ears and they'll drop them and hold them to the
Hold them
ground.
down. Okay.
The only problem is the dogs get very, very active, I should say.
Yeah.
So when you go there to grab hold of the pig, if the dog thinks that your body is part of the pig, they can grab hold of your leg or your arm or something like that because they're still biting. They think you're the pig now.
Just don't have bacon for breakfast that morning, then you smell just like one.
Yes. You don't want to strap any kind of bacon, steak, or anything like that on any kind of meat product. Yes.
Well, that'd be a no-go for me then, because I always keep steak in my pocket, in my pants pocket.
I always keep steak. Yeah, I always keep bacon in my pocket.
Yeah,
so I know.
Man, that's
It's
too
just
bad.
But so I know you guys are probably in your a couple more weeks of good hunting left. What are you going? Do you go into January or?
Yeah,
Or
we
you guys
have a late season archery and black powder season, or
Right.
flintlock season.
Okay.
That runs. It starts day after Christmas and runs till mid-January. Then there's some parts of the state where things are open. I think more toward the end of January. But after that, whitetail season is going to shut
Right.
down.
Yeah.
So by
Right.
late January, deer season's done, and then there's still some small game opportunities.
Get the turkey hunt.
for a
You guys
bear.
do a spring hunt, a bear. Yeah.
Spring for turkey. That's about it in the spring.
Yeah.
Some
Because I
some of
know
the
when I came up there in February, you guys were all about, man, I can't wait till everything is ready to go. You guys were raring to go fishing.
Oh, dude,
you can see you guys were in a cabin
It
too
was a
long.
long winter.
That's-
Last year was a long winter.
That's the way it's turning out to be now. These guys got me into fishing. I grew up 2 or 3 days a year when the trout streams got stocked fishing,
Right.
and that's all I did. And then 2 years ago, these guys got me into bass fishing and walking in the river and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. They had me out ice fishing actually last year,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm into it now.
Ice fishing's pretty cool. You can if you know the lake that you're fishing and you know the contours in the lakes. I mean, some of those guys are so keyed into that. They'll drill a hole and they'll be right on them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they just absolutely know where to be for those fish. And you guys got walleye up there also, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Yeah, there's some lakes here where you'll see more guys ice fishing than you do on a regular summer day fishing.
I
spring
believe
day.
I
Yeah.
believe I've seen a video of you guys doing some walleye fishing by some bridge.
Yeah, that was right in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
Right in the city.
Uh-huh.
That's not too far away from where the show is.
No.
No. I believe, and I don't know, but I got this question to ask you guys, and it has nothing to do with fishing. And I know you guys want to talk fishing, and we'll get back. It's something about sea ducks, something about sea duck huntings, and
Did you see that?
well, I couldn't see it, but I heard.
You heard
I
about
heard
it.
a lot of different things that I have questions about.
The ammo companies are making a good profit.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Are they?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah. That was a good
Well,
time.
pretty sure Winchester heard about that hunt too. They're still
Their inventory went way down.
they're getting ready to book us another one.
But if you really, all kidding aside, when it came to bass fishing, because when I first moved to Florida, I tried to saltwater fish down here, and where I live, I walked out, and I'm not lying to you. I went to the end of an area where guys say they always fish, and I expected it to be like surf fishing.
Yeah.
So I went down there, and I'm looking, and for 2 miles out, all I saw was rock and dirt. And I says, "Where's the water?" And they're like, "Well, we have 4 tides a day."
Oh wow.
And I says, "Okay." So when the water comes back, how deep is it here? He goes, "Oh, it's about a foot." I said, "What are you guys catching a foot of water? Like pinfish, bait fish?"
Yeah.
And he says, "No, we catch these big snook and redfish and trout come in here, and flounder and all kinds of stuff. And I said, you guys are pulling out. I thought they were just messing with me. Here's the northern boy come down south and they're like having a good time with me. So
Yeah, somebody's hiding in the shrubs filming you.
So I says, I heard banjos and all kinds of weird stuff. And I got out of there. I'll tell you what. I got out of there and I went right to the tackle store and I bought a bunch of bass fishing stuff. I bought a bass boat and I joined the Southern Bass Masters down here in the Federation and started fishing that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I became friends with a pretty well-known guy who was called the Bass Professor, Doug Hannon.
Yeah.
And he was like one of the first guys to do underwater filming, bass filming. He invented the guide, the microwave guide that you guys had a chance to do the casting demo with me.
Yeah.
And plus he had 20 other patents, and one of them probably changed the way we all fish today, and that was the weedless prop. That was his patent.
Wow, it's a good guy to know.
For your trolling one. Yeah. Unfortunately, he passed away on us, but before he did, I got to do a couple different things with Doug, which was really cool. He's the only guy that documented catching over 400 bass that weighed 10 pounds or better.
Wow.
Yeah. There are people trying to break his record still today, and they're finding it a little more challenging, even though we do have a lot more bass over 10 pounds these days. But they're starting to get a little smarter, and you can see that in the lure design. People are always trying to have an edge. Back when Doug was doing it, there wasn't really a thing called a drop shot. We sort of did something similar to it, but they didn't really have a name to it. A lot of sluggo type of baits, or weedless, weightless pieces of rubber we were throwing. And it was very slow and subtle, and it would swim erratically. And you can get it into the weeds and do whatever you want. But knowing Doug was really cool because we were able to go on a lake, and he just knew the strangest stuff. Like, he was very into the Saluna tables, with the moon.
Yeah.
He was very into moon phases. And it didn't make a difference if you were a bird watcher, if you're a hunter, if you're a fisherman. The moon phases play a lot when these animals are eating, when they're in a good feeding pattern.
Yeah, it affects everything.
Yeah, so he invented the moon clock. I mean, if you look that up, you'll get to see that. And it's very simple to use, and like I said, you could use it for anything. If you want to watch birds, if you want to shoot birds, if whatever you want to do. And then Doug just turned around to me, and from talking to him, and he knew a lot of high-profile guys. All of the big names in the bass fishing world was friends with Doug. Him and a biologist, Tony, invented all of this stuff that keeps the bass alive. Keep Alive products, Sure Life products actually is. So, and when Shimano came out with the big tanks and they would put the chemicals in there to keep the bass alive because they were losing so many bass when they first started doing the tournaments. So these two fellas, they came up with a way to keep the bass alive, so that guys like us would be able to enjoy it. And, and then he turned around and says, I'm a big fly fisherman. And I says, no, I didn't know that you fly fish. And I said, what are you fishing for? He says, I love to tarpon fish.
On the fly?
I said, yeah.
Wow.
I said, serious? And he says, yeah. He says, do you fly fish? I said, yeah, I haven't done it in a long time. So I'm over his house. We're in the backyard, and he hands me a fly rod. He says, let me see you cast. And he says, hey, you do pretty good. He says, come on in the house, and he opens up this book, and here's guys like he's fishing with Flip Pallet and, Chichi Rodriguez.
Wow.
And, I mean, he's fishing with all of these big known fishermen down here.
Yeah.
That we knew. Guy Harvey, he's got pictures of him and Guy Harvey, and they're diving and I got
Wow.
He had showed me pictures of Guy Harvey's kids when they were little tiny things, and guys that have multiple world records. And I says, you really got me, Doug. And he was he liked to play games. He's done some funny stuff on the boat with me. And one day when we're off the air, I'll tell you some of these stories because some we're kind of I don't know if we'll get away with putting them on the air, but it was funny stuff. It was all in good stuff.
Sure.
So I would just take Doug out, and because we live close to a lake, and we live close to the Gulf here, we do a half-a-day trip on the Gulf, and then we do a half-a-day trip bass fishing.
Oh,
and
that sounds terrible.
It was awful, but and that brings up another point. You see, people really think that there are different rods to fish saltwater with than freshwater.
Yeah.
When we're talking inshore fishing, you could use the same rod. So if you're not privy to 100 rods and you want to go out and you want to have one or two really, really good rods in your arsenal of rods, you can do that, and you can freshwater fish and you can saltwater fish with them. And I showed a lot of people that, and they were, people come down here every day from up north, and they're ready to throw all their fishing gear away. I says, well, what do you have? Don't throw it away yet. Let me see what you have. And I was like, no, all of that's good. He says, well, the guy down the road said none of it's good. I says, well, maybe the guy down the road,
owns
wants
a bait
you to
shop.
buy some stuff from him. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't fish,
Yeah.
I got no clue what to tell you there. But if you're snook fishing, red fishing, and trout fishing, it's the same rod you'd bass fish with.
Yeah.
When we get into the bigger stuff like the grouper and the tarpon and stuff, then you want to bump up your gear. But even a 200-pound tarpon, we're using like 30-pound rod blanks. 30 to 50s, 20 to 40s, all in that rod class.
Wow.
So yeah, your steelhead rod, your big catfish rod. I know you have one of them. And
With a new tip.
well, with a new tip on it. Yes. No, and I'm not, and believe me, I'm not making fun. I know guys that's what they do for a living. They catfish.
Yeah.
And they catch 50-pound cat. I mean, it's not a lie. They catch these big 50-pound catfish, and they take people on charters just to do it. And it's just a whole nother way of fishing. Like I said, when somebody says I'm a fisherman, I says, okay, what do you fish for? When somebody tells me I'm an angler, I'm more inclined to say, oh, so you fish in a pond, a lake, stream, you do whatever it takes to catch a fish.
Yeah.
Because we, for the most part, use artificials, but there are time in the year when live bait just outdoes. I mean, you can catch hundreds of fish in a day. I took a bunch of people down south this year before we had this poor red tide thing that came in and killed a lot of fish for us down here in Florida. And we were catching over 100 snook a day, and I did it for 30 days.
You got to be kidding me.
No lie.
Really? 100
Yes.
snook a day?
100 snook a day.
Oh, wow.
And you know what? I got so tired of catching snook, I was begging for a redfish.
Has anybody ever said that before?
Just Mike, just
other
right now.
than
Yeah.
Just me.
Wow.
I got tired of catching snook.
I got tired of catching snook, and really, I was hoping to catch redfish.
Yeah.
And we caught 2 redfish in 30 days. And I'm telling you, over 1,000. I mean, I can't even tell you how many snook. I had my wife on the boat.
Yeah.
And she was casting. By the time she would reel the fish in, I handed her another rod, and she'd have another snook on. And we would just... the dolphin were trying to eat my... In fact, I posted a video where the dolphin was trying to eat the snook. They come right up to your snook, and they'll pull it right off the line.
Oh, wow.
Now, like
dolphin... Yeah.
these are like
miserable down
20-inch plus snook, too. This isn't...
Those were like 24s to 30s. These were bigger. Yeah, these.
I mean, you're not in a hole catching sunnies one after another. You're catching sizable fish.
Yeah.
And if you look at a snook down here, we call them line siders because they like to run. Okay, they're a running, jumping type of fish. They're kind of smart. If there's mangroves or if there's a dock around, they will weave you in and out of a dock, through the mangroves, anything they have to do to get that hook out of their mouth, break your line. Some of the big girls, they're very, very hard to catch. You really have to have what they want. And there's certain guys that, they key on them big 40-inch snook, and they do very well doing that. But like I tell people, do you want to catch snook, or do you want a prize? Because if you want a prize, then we're going to work a little bit, but we'll get you, a big fish, but we got to work. So it's just like bass fishing. Do you want to catch, 10 or 15 keeper bass, or do you want the 10-pounder?
I don't know. 124 to 30-inch snook just doesn't sound like a bad day at all, no matter
No.
how.
That also has that has to wear you out, because like you're saying, that's a heck of a fight for a fish.
Well, you see, that's the time in your life when you turn around and you say, well, I catch fish all the time. So you want somebody else to experience what you're doing.
Yeah.
The real deal here is, as you get into whatever sport you're in, and you're at the top of your line, or think you're where you need to be, the best compliment is to see somebody on your boat or on shore next to you, and you tell them, or you hand them a rod, and they do what you just did. And then they do it again. And it's just, there is just sometimes I like to sit back and just watch somebody else catch a fish. And believe me, every fish I catch is a new deal for me. I don't say, I just caught that one, except for when you catch 100 snook, then you say that. But
no, but there's definitely a rewarding aspect to pass on that knowledge and to see that knowledge implemented in a very successful way.
Yeah, watching it work.
I got my 6-year-old grandson was catching snook on the boat. I had my 3-year-old grandson on the boat with me catching snook. It was hysterical.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it was so fun. I had to hold his butt so he didn't go overboard. And hopefully, the little guys, they're always invested. If you're on my boat, in the lore down here, you have to be in a vest anyhow. But that's a very important thing. If you're going to bring kids with you, bring them with you, but make sure, I don't care if you're in the woods, you're on a boat, wherever you're doing, follow all the safety rules, especially with kids. You want them to learn right from the beginning. And everything's so cool.
Yeah.
But,
Mike, I was checking out your Instagram page. You're on Instagram as Mr. Gatorbite. All one word, right?
Yes, sir.
And I saw probably some of the biggest speckled trout I've ever seen.
And,
just from, a day ago or something like that,
just
right?
this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monday night I got a phone call from one of my fishing buddies down here, and he says, looks like we're going to have a real bad week, and Tuesday being the best day, can you get away? And I was like, sure. I says, it's still cold and it was kind of weird, so you don't have to get up, before the sun comes out. And he says, I'd really like you to get some shrimp. We use shrimp to, shrimp is a great crustacean down here. It's almost like giving a crawfish to a bass.
Yeah.
I mean, they just love it. You'll notice the redfish. I posted a redfish picture, and they have a lot of blue in their tail.
Mm-hmm.
That's showing that they're feeding on crustaceans. That they're inshore. They're feeding good, and they're usually eating some kind of crustacean. They'll get that nice blue color in them. So we were like, we're just going to goof around. We'll see what we can find. And I said, well, guys, we really don't need shrimp. I said, if you were running a charter or something, I'd say bring live bait all the time. But if you have a bunch of guys that know how to throw lures, wintertime in Florida, they will eat plastic. They will eat. They don't care. They're hungry. They want to eat if you get in the right spot.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to let things heat up a little bit, because you got to remember, it's always usually hot in Florida. You get cold front comes in here, the fish start moving real slow. Guys are chunking lures out there and winding back, and they say, I can't catch a fish. I says, well, you slow your bait down. Stop it. Even. And so we're on the boat, and we get to an area, and I could see the trout, and we're throwing live shrimp at them. We figured I call it cement fishing because you basically sit in a chair and you got to float and you cast out there, or gentleman fishing, and you just sit there, wait till the fish says, "Oh, look at that, a live bait," and they eat it, and then they take off on you. So we're sitting there, and the poor shrimp drowned it. I mean, it lives in water, and it drowned it, or it died from boredom. I don't know, one of the two things. So I decide, here's Mike. I says, I'm going to grab my jigging rod. I come from up north. We love to jig, That was just something I learned up there, and come down here and got this old chunk of plastic. And I sponsored by a company called Miralor, and they're a great company down here in Florida that their family ran, and they're just wonderful people. And I have one of his little shads on there. I cast it out there. I lift it one time, let it drop, lift it again, and boom, and I got the really big one.
Yeah.
And everybody on the boat turned around and says, "What'd you catch that on?" I says, "Well, I wasn't using shrimp." And they says, "Well, what'd you get on?" I said, "The jig. Like I told you today, they'll eat plastic this time of year. You don't need shrimp." But we had 8 dozen shrimp, so I'm like, we'll cook them later. I don't know.
They're going to die of boredom anyways.
Yeah. So, so I turned around, I cast again. Next cast, I did again. Boom! I get the second, that picture where I'm holding the 2 big ones, and they're looking at me like, "Did you just do that again?" I was like, "Well, let me just turn around here and look." I said, "Yeah, it's only me holding these fish. You're taking a picture." I said, "There you go." So I do it again, and after the 5th fish, my partner, my buddy there, he turns around, and he says, "Hey, can I do that?" And
it took them
"Absolutely."
5 fish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Stevie
No,
would have
these are
short drift you after
Dude,
that first one.
the first one, I'd have been
stubborn, very stubborn people.
Oh,
We had
man.
the power poles down and everything, so you're sitting there anchored. It's a real cool thing,
Oh,
And,
my. Well, they're more patient than I would be. Holy smokes.
He casts out 3 times, doesn't catch a fish. I make a cast, boom, I get another fish. He's like, "Seriously, what's going on here?" And I says, "I told you, go in my bag. They want this watermelon red glitter. I mean, I'll even say it on the air. I don't care. That's the color they wanted."
Wow.
And he says, "Well, how would you know what color they want?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm looking in the water here, and the first thing I see is we have these things called pinfish.
Yeah.
And they're about 4 inches long, the same length of the bait I'm throwing. Okay? And then I'm looking in the water, and I'm saying, man, they're giving off because they're kind of colorful pinfish. And with the water bottom that we had, I said they kind of look like my lure. So I said, match the hatch. It's been saying that for 100 years. He puts one on, first cast, boom, pulls out an 18-inch trout. He's going,
Wow.
I can't believe it. And then that's all he threw all day long,
Wow.
catching trout. And I didn't post the picture because I was being really nice. We're sitting there anchored, and we're casting into a hole, okay, and off a little island, and they were all stacked up in there. And the gentleman with a boat and his dog came around the island, and I yelled, "Hey, please don't park there." I says, "That's where the fish are. I don't mind if you cast into it, but stay off of it and cast in the hole, and everybody catch fish," because I'm sure there was a bunch of them in there. And next thing I know is he throws the anchor overboard, and he lands. He's in the hole. He's on top of the hole. So I made a cast, and I dropped the lure right next to his boat, and I pulled another fish out, and he looked at me. I said, "I'm trying to tell you, the fish are under your boat. Can you move?" And the guy proceeds to hook up a shrimp and cast to the island. And 15 minutes goes by. He's not catching anything. And I looked at my buddy there, and I said, "Why don't we just pull anchor and go? We'll go find someplace else to fish, because this is, they're gone now. They scattered."
Yeah.
So we deal with this a lot in Florida, though. It's just something that happens. People come in. We have guides down here that have been guiding for over 20, 25 years, and people see their boat, and they have a paid charter. And, here you are paying $400 to, if you're one of these premier guys, I mean, $400, $500, $600 to go fishing for the day. And, you get this guy that pulls in between you or in the hole and ruins the whole, day of fishing. And you're like, oh my gosh, how can you do that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we went and did something else, and about a half an hour went by, the tide changed, and he says, what do you want to do? I said, let's go back to the island, catch some more of them big trout. I says, I'm fine with that, and we caught a couple small redfish, and the old man had moved to a different part of the island. And as a joke, he says, where are you going to cast? I said, I'm going to cast right at the old guy's boat and pull a trout out. So my next cast, I pulled a trout out from underneath the guy's boat.
Oh, wow.
And he just looked at me and he's like, seriously? And I was like, I was just like, I says, I won't cast it no more. It's all right. I says, I'll fish over here.
So, Mike,
but, yeah, go ahead.
You were just. I'm trying to picture how you were fishing that lure. So is this like a mirror lure, like the MR27? Something that's no.
With this is his soft plastics. Okay, and I'll tell you why I didn't go to like the Miradines or to a top, to one of their top water lures or anything with treble hooks. Is we had floating grass. So there's a lot of matted grass coming through. And so what I would have to do is I'd have to cast the lure out in between the grass, and then by the time I got it to the boat, I'd be cleaning the grass off. So going down to a single hook. So now what this looks like in the bass fishing world, you guys call it a swim bait. Okay, it's basically a small swim bait. And they've been using it saltwater fishing way, for 1,000 years. Forever. And I would have, this time of year, too, if they want it real slow, I still tie my own hair jigs. So the bucktail is always, I'm going to tell you guys, if you had one lure to carry a bucktail jig with you, okay? When you work a bucktail jig and you learn how to use them, they look more realistic, and they actually pulsate in the water if they're tied right. So they look like a live fish in the water.
Yeah.
And I believe, and you guys can Google this or whatever you want to do, but I believe when you go into the Navy, they used to give you a survival kit, and in your survival kit was a white jig, a white hair jig in there for your survival.
No kidding.
Yes.
I think actually I've seen like survival kits that were supposedly these were like military issue stuff back in the day, and I'm pretty sure I've seen like a white hairtail jig in there.
There it is.
Yeah. And you could change colors on jigs. I mean, I tie mine now. I tie hackle into it. I tie feathers on them. I steal patterns from fly fishermen, and I says, well, if they're going to eat it on the fly, why wouldn't they eat it on a piece of lead? It's just I'm converting it over for the style of fishing that I'm doing at that time.
Yeah.
But always have a jig with you, and it, just for the reason that a jig can be fished fast, slow. It can be fished high in the water column, or you can fish it low in the water column, in the center. You can fish it anywhere in the water column. So if you only had one lure and you took a jig with you, you can actually cover the whole water column, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it makes sense. Just based on your retrieve.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And how heavy a lead. You don't even have to put lead in it. You can hook them just to a regular bass style hook.
Yeah.
I put belly hooks on them too, and then they float more. You put the weight closer to the center, and then they'll actually drop horizontally. And then if you they'll stay horizontal and they'll drop straight down.
Yeah.
If you move that weight to the front, they're going to be nose heavy and drop to the front. If you're fishing like a shrimp-looking imitation and you move that hook towards the back, they'll actually go backwards. And when a shrimp is being attacked, they kick backwards. If you ever watch video, they'll swim backwards.
Like crayfish.
And yeah. I mean, there's just.
So, Mike, we talked earlier about you really getting into bass fishing with the Bass Professor and a little bit of how he kind of opened some other doors. But how did you really turn from bass fishing, which I'm sure you still do, but, I mean, you kind of made that right turn to the Gulf, to saltwater fishing, and did it pretty, like, you're pretty into it.
Well, I'll tell you that the deal is when I moved down here, I got lucky, sort of like I got lucky when I met you guys. You know, when you meet a bunch of people that you really can't stand, but you want to hang out with. No,
I'm familiar.
you just
Yeah, we do it every week.
Present
that a
company
Thursday.
excluded.
I know. You know, you get a bunch of guys, and it's like you knew them forever.
Yeah,
there was never no awkwardness. You know, you didn't know if you were going to step. I mean, I think we were cutting up on each other like the first 5 minutes we all met.
It didn't take long.
Easily, yeah.
And here you got this poor guy that's lived in the South now for 30 years, and you got me out in the snow making casts with you guys. And I'm like, you know, it was okay. And remember what I told you? I says, remember the guy with the window? I told him I was going to pitch. I was going to pitch the lure and hit the window, and the guy looked at me and he says, "No, you're not." And then what was his next word? We can't use the S word on here, but he says, "Holy." And
it happened.
Sure enough.
Yeah, and that's the S factor. We call that the S factor because everybody that casts with me, that's the first thing they say. And we just laugh about it. You know, it's just something that we do. But and part of, you know, all of that, and I'll get into, if you want really quick, the microwave guide. And if people don't know what it is, it looks like a guide with another guide on top of it. So you have like a bigger ring and then a small ring, right attached to it. And what happens is when your line comes off of your reel, there's a spinning reel. There's a big helix that comes off of there. So the bottom ring actually captures that line, and then we control it and send it through the second smaller guide, and then all your guides are small coming out the rod, like a bait caster would be set up. So we capture it, and we send it straight. It goes straight. There's no more helix coming out of your line. So it takes all the friction out of the line. You get a longer, smoother cast. You guys felt it. I mean, right away you felt the difference.
I felt a smoother cast. Mine didn't go very far, but I don't think that was the microwave guide.
You got height out of yours. You know, some people get more height and some people get more distance. And
thanks for making me feel better. I appreciate that.
No, and you know what? I've done thousands of these casting demonstrations, and I've done it with really, I mean, and I will not name any names, but high-profile fishermen that have been fishing. I mean, guys you watch on TV, and it's fun to fish with them. You know, to do this with them, it's just it's a real cool thing. There's some kind of awe factor to all of that, and you know, you sit there and you even watch them turn around, and you're like, I can't believe this. It's like, you know, I'm a professional. This is how I make my living. I make millions of dollars fishing, and this is like incredible.
Yeah.
And it is. It's a great. You know, it's the best thing that probably happened to a spinning rod in over 20, maybe 30 years. Because if you really look at a spinning rod, what's really changed? We didn't change nothing to it. We made better guides. We made better inserts to the guides.
Mm-hmm.
But we
maybe a little bit of weight for the actual spinning reel has decreased over the years. But
but I mean, there wasn't really anything significant. Now here comes a guy, and he turns around in one guide. I'm going to control your line and make it come out straight. Now, even your top of the line guide company, they can't do it, and they say it does what it does, and they do it in three to four guides it takes to do what we can do in one. Okay, so but some good things came out of all of this, because you can't make the same guide because it's under patents and you know, other deals going on here. You can make your rod better. So here along came, you know, some of these new guides that came out. And if you see, did you see all of the new rods now? All of the last like 5 guides or so are all the same size coming out. There's no longer this cone of flight, they call it, where you had like a 30, a 25, a 20, and it just progressively got smaller.
When you say that number, that's the millimeter of the actual insert of the guide. The guide ring for our listeners.
So, That was very good. You're really good at this.
He probably knows more about rod building than
anybody at this table. That's for sure.
I like smart people.
We think he's okay.
He made a comment when we talked with Terry Sturgeon a few months back.
It was with Terry.
It was with Terry.
Yeah.
And we've never let him live it down. We were talking about rod building, and yeah.
I've built a few rods, and I'm in the process of building one right now. So
I'm gonna.
and it's not just fixing Ryan's broken rods. I'm building some from a kit and whatnot. So I have a little bit of firsthand experience on what you're talking about.
Well, now you can understand. You have custom rod builders, you have semi-custom rod builders, and you just have your big box store rods.
Yep.
Some of the deals, and I'm not. Listen, I don't care who's rod, who's real, whatever. We're just gonna let you guys figure out what you like to use. If you ask me my opinion, I'll tell you what I use and why I use it. But when you build a rod, and now there is a spline on the rod, okay? And everybody's saying, well, the rod's round, so what the heck is a spline? Well, if you take your rod and you can bend your rod before it has any guides on it, and you could hold it with your foot and bend it from the tip down, and all of a sudden the rod will snap around to an area. Okay, and there's a top and bottom of that spline, and it's going to want to rotate one way always to this spline. So when your rod is splined properly, and you catch a fish, it will not twist in your hand. You ever see guys, and you watch them on TV, they got a fish on there, and all of a sudden it looks like the rod's twisting and their wrist is twisting? Mm-hmm. That's because that rod is not splined, okay, or not splined properly, okay? So when you spline your rod properly, it'll actually load up. And by loading up, I mean, as you bring your arm back, whatever lure you have is going to pull the blank backwards. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a bow in your rod. And then as you move your arm forward, it's going to actually throw the lure forward. And if you can learn how to load your rod properly, and I showed you that, right? I sat on the floor, and I buried my elbow into my side, and all I did was use my wrist to cast.
Yep, and you casted just as far
further than me.
Sitting down.
Not as high, though.
Your distance on your cast did not change from when you were standing up compared to when you were sitting down just using the wrist action.
And I tell everybody it's like a circus act. You go to the circus and the guy says, hey, throw these darts at the balloons, and you can't hit one all of a sudden. Yeah. You can't knock all the cans down. You don't know the dynamics of what you have to do to get to win that prize. So on a fishing rod, it's easier. Once you learn how to load your rod and cast, you'll come off the water and you won't even feel like I said, when I tell you you're catching 100 fish in a day, you got to remember, you probably casted, 1,000 times. So, and you're doing that 3-4 times a day. When I'm doing, that show, I did that for 9 days. I brought guys out there.
Right.
Wow.
Okay, and did these casting demonstrations.
Wow.
So you can imagine how many times I flexed that rod and sent it forward. And that's all you have to learn. And that's why I do the thing where I do the bow and arrow, where I actually grab the lure and I pull down on a blank and I just shoot it out there, and it goes the same distance as if I'm casting it.
That was
and I try to tell everybody, it's the rod. Let the rod do the work.
With doing that bow and arrow twitch thing, you just loaded the blank, and yet the blank was actually giving the propulsion, not a swinging motion. It was the blank flexing to toss the lure.
Because what I did was I loaded the blank. The blank was loaded. It's like loading your rifle. I mean, you can put a shell in your rifle, but if you don't have the wad in there, if you don't have the pellets in there, if you don't have gunpowder in there, it's never going to come out the barrel. Right. Okay? The same thing with the rod. Same thing with a bow and arrow. The shaft on that. If you don't put string on your bow, you can't load your limbs. Yep. It's not going to fire. Same thing with the rod. It's got to be loaded properly. And your accuracy is going to increase by 100% because now you're not doing this thing where your arms are in some kind of goofy position over the top of your head. You're more focused on what you're casting at. And I tell a lot of guys, I said, it's nice to see somebody cast real far. I said, but it's better to see somebody that can hit an object, okay? Because your accuracy is probably more important than your distance sometimes.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So
I've been saying that.
Yeah, you can, for the most part, you can move up and down the bank, or you can move your boat position. But if you can't toss right underneath that branch or that overhanging tree and not get hung up, being accurate, no matter how long your distance is, you're going to lose lures and lose time fishing. So the accuracy part's way more important.
And people come up to me and they say, "Oh, what length rod to use?" I says, "Well, it depends. What am I fishing for? If I'm in open water and I'm throwing live bait or something, sometimes I like a longer rod. I mean, almost an 8-foot rod, 7'8", and I'll cast live bait, and I get a long cast out of it. Okay, but if I'm inside and I'm flipping or pitching or really want to skip docks, I want a shorter rod. It's more accurate. There is no way you're going to take that 8-foot rod and try and, I'm not saying you can't skip a bait with an 8-foot rod. I'm just saying your accuracy will diminish the longer the rod is. So you probably want to come down to that 6'6" rod, 7-foot rod. Saltwater fishing, most of my rods are 7 feet and longer. When I freshwater fish, I have 6-footers. I got 6'6", 7 foot. And then when I'm throwing my big crankbaits, I may have that 7-8 rod just because I want a long cast. And I'm in, basically open water, and I want the lure to hit the depth that I'm doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And just, really quick, all of my fish that I catch, when you go on that Instagram page, I usually try to post what, size line I'm using. For the most part, any of my inshore fish is on a 10-pound braid, and it's made by a company in Kentucky, and that's Fins. Mm-hmm. And they make a situational braid for any, type of fishing you want to do.
I got a question on that, your poundage there, because a lot of times I hear like a mindset of, when using braid, I'm going to get away with some extra pound line because I'm already smaller diameter than using mono. What's the idea with going for that light poundage, only 10 pound?
Okay, so your 10-pound braid or your 10-pound breaking strength line is probably equivalent to, and each, don't quote me on this because each line company has their own line to diameter type of deal.
This will just be like a ballpark number.
You're probably around 2-pound test diameter.
Wow.
Okay, of monofilament. So now a couple things can happen. I can pack more line on my reel. Okay. So say I want to go for a world record. Okay.
Who doesn't?
And I want to use a very light line. I can pack a lot of braid on there. Okay, so I can play the fish. I can let them run, get tired, and get that fishing. Where and it has some benefits. If you're around grass and stuff like that, it'll sort of cut through the grass and this and that. But one thing people don't understand, the difference between braids and mono, your braid has very little stretch. Okay, so if I'm fishing a braid, I need to change my rod a little bit. Like I wouldn't use, if I'm using a heavy action rod and I put a crankbait on there, I'll be tearing that crankbait out of their face all day long. Okay, because there's just no stretch anywhere. Yeah. So I have to go down to like a medium or a medium heavy because I need some kind of bend in the rod. I want the rod to give me some kind of play. Okay, where if I had monofilament on it, I could bump up, say instead of a medium, go to a medium heavy, and then your monos can have like up to 25% stretch. Okay, so when a fish hits that lure, it's going to stretch so you won't tear that lure out of their face.
Okay.
So that's some of the things, and a couple other things are braid is basically stronger than steel or as strong as steel. but it doesn't have a lot of abrasion resistance. So, and you could test this yourself. Take a piece of braid and hold it taut. Have another guy just take his knife and go side to side with it, and you'll see it start to getting fuzzy, and then all of a sudden it'll break. Okay? Take a piece of monofilament, the same pound test, and hold that out and run your knife and try to stay with the same pressure. Run your knife back and forth, and you'll see that the monofilament will have more abrasion resistance to it.
It'll probably heat up and break before it would actually.
It doesn't get fuzzy, but it'll get rough, like as when you catch too many fish and you should retie.
I'll take your word for it.
I've never had that problem.
Yeah, after you catch 100 snook, stuff starts wearing out.
Well, and then we have our other fish like our tarpon down here. Then I'll bump up to like 65-pound braid.
Can I make a note quick?
Yeah.
Every species you keep talking about, I've never caught.
It's on your bucket list.
It's just making me drool up here with cabin fever in Pennsylvania in December. So.
Well, you know what you do is if at any time you feel really bad, what you do is open my Instagram page, click on that fish, right, and have one of the guys splash water on you, and just make believe you're on the water, and have a fan set up so you get some wind every once in a while, know. And you'll feel great.
Okay,
you'll feel great.
That'll work.
That's a great idea.
You got to remember now, and when I'm down here and you guys are showing me these pictures that you're on, you're shooting sea duck with the wrong shot, and the decoys are like 16 times the size of the duck because they're supposed to have good eyesight and they're blind or something. I don't know.
Oh. Hey, let's get back to fishing here.
I will.
Enough about us. Let's talk about you.
That 10-pound diameter braid, you're mainly you're using that so you can increase the amount of line you're putting on the spool, and then you're also you're just having a little bit more. Is there anything with like the resistance in the water by using that thin a line?
Well, there's a lot of factors now. So if you're fishing we'll take something with current like a river or here, like I said, we have tide. So if you have moving water, one thing you gotta keep in mind with a braid is braids float. Okay, so your line's going to float on top of the water. So you got to keep line control on there. So you want to snug up your line, because if you don't, what'll happen is, say we're throwing a live bait out and it's on a float. The line that's sitting on the water is going to go with the current. Okay, and if there's any grass, the grass is going to hang up on the line. It's going to pull it a little bit further down on you. Fish is going to grab the bait. You're going to go to set the hook, and you're going to have like 30 feet of line to the left of you, and you're not going to get a good hook set.
Right.
So what you have to do is basically watch what your line is doing always. You can cast up current, and then you can let your line sweep, sort of like when you're fly fishing some of the streams.
Yeah.
Basically, same thing. You fly a line, you're using a floating line, sitting there, and it's floating across the water, and a big old trout, steelhead, whatever, comes up and eats it on you, and everybody has a good day. So it's just, like I said, your biggest problem in fishing is usually the fisherman.
Yeah.
Okay, because I have guys.
I've been saying that for years about Stevie.
I get I hear I get wind knots with braid. It's awful. This happens.
Stevie does. I'm not to pick on Stevie again. I've never met more wind knots until I met Stevie.
Funny you bring that up, because I really wanted to talk to Mike about that. And I was hoping you'd stop talking about monofilament for a second so that I could get that in there.
Squeeze that in,
Dave. So he's right. So Dave brought up a big issue for me that I've been having, and for whatever reason, it just started this year. But I use the same rod to inshore saltwater fish that I use to bass fish.
Okay.
And it's a 7-foot pen rod. And for whatever reason, just recently, and maybe it's going on forever, maybe I don't know, but I just noticed it more recently this past season. If I'm doing anything that leaves any type, or fishing any type of, any style that leaves any type of slack in the line. So if I'm walking the dog, or even using like a finesse type
baits, right?
you know,
Like baits and stuff.
Yeah, even like a drop shot, or a Ned rig, something where there's any type of slack in the line. Oh, man, it's crazy if I try to wacky rig, a Senko or something like that. I end up with these insane wind knots.
And you tried a couple different brands.
I've tried I've tried,
except Finn.
I've tried 3 different brands. All the major brands.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been waiting to try Finn's because I wanted to talk to you, because I know there's, Finn's is one of the groups that offer, it seems like they have a different type of braid for, every situation. So I've been wanting to talk to you about this to see if there's something specific that I could try to maybe help out with this.
One of the lines I use from Finn's, a lot of those pictures you see is a product called Wind Tamer, and Wind Tamer is a 4-carrier braid.
Bingo.
Braids come in different strands. There's like a 4-carrier. They have 8s. Finn's was the first company to come out with a 9-carrier. It actually has a core in it. And then now there's 2 other brands, I believe, that have the 9-carrier. They like Finn's so good that they I'm not going to use the word copy, but they made their own type of braid like this because it performs really well. A couple things you got to look at. Okay, if you got to look at your action of your rod and your power of your rod. So your action, so you'll have a fast action. Say you said top water. Let's go to top water. So you're taking a top water. If you have a very stiff tip on your rod, it might be hard to work that top water because you have no give. Okay, and when you're walking the dog, you're on a slack line, so your lure can come to the left, go to the right, go to the left, go to the right, and the longer you pause, once you learn how to do that, the further it's going to sweep out. So there's times when a fish wants a very wide wobble, and there's other times when you can do it faster and it'll make it very tight.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you have more of a fast action tip, you'll probably do better on that. And then you got to go by how heavy is the lure. Are you using like 6-pound test line? You don't want to have something that's rated for 10 to 20 pound.
Yeah.
You want more of a lighter rod to do that with. And a lot of people think that, oh man, that's a small rod, I can't catch a big fish. You can catch almost any size fish you want on any size rod. It just, all the parameters have to be correct for that day for it to happen.
Yeah.
But look at things like that. So if you're going to throw like a weightless hook, like a Senko or somebody's like that, or drop shots, you're on a small weight and you're dropping that up and down, and you're not going to have a heavy action rod. You're going to be more mediums, probably, maybe even medium light for that. And if you're using a fluorocarbon, that's going to change things too. But you just got to remember your braid has no stretch, except Finn's does have one braid that does have a stretch. And you get about 10% stretch in the line, maybe 15%. But just for the normal use, you're using either a 4-carrier, which they have the only round braid in 4-carrier. Everybody else is basically flat when they do that.
Okay.
So you want that round braid. It comes off the spools a lot better anyhow. You're going to get a lot more sensitivity. Okay. And remember, your braids float. So that braid's going to come across the line. And the other thing is, if you're using top water, do you guys tie any kind of like a fluorocarbon leader on the end of it, or do you go straight braid to the lure?
I normally go straight braid to the lure
For
with
top
water. Yeah.
Okay. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll take a piece of monofilament, okay, and on our top waters. See, we always use a leader because of the fish that we have gill rakers. Some of them are very abrasive mouths, and they can break us off if they I remember what I told you. If the line's really taut and you come across something sharp, and we have oyster bars and stuff like this, it'll cut the line right away. So we have that piece of leader on the front there. Now, mono leader floats. Mono floats.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you work in top water, just use mono. If you put fluorocarbon on there, fluorocarbon's heavy. It sinks. So it'll push the nose of your bait down. Okay? And then you won't walk the dog as good. Not saying you can't. Anything I tell you is, I don't want people to think, oh, that guy's crazy. It's impossible. I'm just telling you things that could make the law work better for you.
You're just saying the easier way to do something. There's
Right.
multiple ways to do something, but you're kind of giving us the easier way, the best way to approach something.
Yeah, it just gives you a little bit of an edge sometimes that you some fish are some days fish just don't. They don't want to eat, so you got to get them to react to what you're doing. I mean, they're only going to eat for two reasons. They're going to react to it, or they're hungry. Okay, so if they're on a reaction bite, basically you're, like anybody else, it's like having a mosquito flying around your head. You're going to swing at it because it's driving you nuts. Well, they're going to have this thing come past them, and they're going to be like, hey, that thing's too close to my home. I'm just going to kill it.
Yeah.
And, and that's that. And then there's other times when they are absolutely hungry, and they'll eat, any color you throw, and they don't care what size it is, and they'll just choke it all down. And those are the days that I fish on. No.
That's perfect. Mike, I knew this was going to be a good night.
A lot of information. I love it.
Yeah. I told these guys I knew we were in for a good one.
And we really, honestly, I need to apologize to the listeners.
The surface.
Because I've been wanting to have Mike on for so long, and this was way overdue. So
I know it's only been 11 months, but it's okay.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I had to take medication because I started itching and all kinds of twitching stuff.
Way overdue.
But like I said, just to leave you guys with something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody's going to tell you should do this, you should do that. I'm probably like the garbage pail fisherman, and what I mean by that is every time I fish with somebody, and I don't care if you're an elite fisherman or you just started fishing yesterday, if you're catching a fish, there is a reason why you're catching that fish, and I'm always watching what everybody else does. And then I look at something and I go back home and I said, what he did, okay, I'm going to try that, and I may have a little variation of what you may have done and make it work for me. Okay, so just always go out there, have a good time. One thing you don't want to do is get frustrated. Just always have a good time. Make it fun, and you'll catch more, and you'll have a better day.
That's good advice.
That's perfect.
Great advice.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, so we are really bumping up on time now, and we started this new thing that we called the Fast Five. But because Stevie had to get all his questions answered.
Oh, man. It's my fault now.
We're going to have to shorten that list.
It's my fault Mike's so awesome.
And I think, is it your fault that he's so awesome?
It's the fast one.
Yeah, what we're gonna do is just jump right. We're gonna cut right to the chase, as they say, and we're just gonna hit number 5. So, Mike, could you just tell us what would be on your bucket list? What's your number 1 bucket list, either fish or fishing trip?
Probably some kind of billfish right now.
Yeah.
So you're talking marlin, sailfish.
Yeah. Nice. I like it.
And there's a couple really good places that, you can go and you can actually billfish and tuna fish at the same time. I mean, there's just some incredible areas. Los Sueños and Guatemala has some places, and not to forget Florida. We have a place we call Sailfish Alley on the opposite coast, and the sailfish make a run through there, and they're just fun. They're a little smaller. Everybody thinks sailfish are gigantic. They're like about 60 pounds. And then when you go to some of these islands, they grow bigger. They're 90s and 120s,
Wow.
which is a great. Any of those billfish fish really fantastic. You just have a great time, and you use on sailfish you can drop down and use light rods, and it's just a hoot.
Ooh.
But I think right now that's what I mean, because I've caught a lot of tarpon and kingfish and other fish that run. Anything with a forked tail runs real fast. Anything with a broom tail is a hard swimmer. Like your redfish. That's why we like catching those, because they just put their head down and they're like bulldogs. Yeah. It's a wonderful fish to catch.
Well, thank you, Mike. And for our listeners, where can they find you?
They can find me. I guess the best place is go to Instagram. Go to MrGatorBite.com. I think that's what they do on Instagram. Just type in Mr. Gatorbite, and you should see me come up. And my page is kind of private, and I'll tell you why I did that. So click on me, and if they're like a friend of your guys, I'll have them screened by the police department. And the reason why I did that is as of lately, there's some kind of really goofy stuff, and I guess you guys see it too. I mean, you get this person that only has like one friend in the world, and they're usually a very hot girl or something like that, and then it's somebody overseas that's hacks into your page, and
I've got at least 3 or 4 dozen friends just like that, just like you described. It's crazy.
I know. I've seen your page. I actually wash my eyes and my hands 3 to 4 times.
Hey, Mike, are you going to be at Harrisburg this year?
That's what we're working on. In fact, I talked with Terry from T. Allen Rods, and we're hashing all of that out right now. Because I'll tell you what, we really, really enjoyed that show. The people up there were great. When you guys, everybody was happy. The Eagles won this year, so they were the guys. I know there's, that's my nephew lives up in Pennsylvania, and that's not his team, but it was still somebody from Pennsylvania that won, and it brought everybody's spirits up, and it was pretty cool to see that many people. I mean, when they opened the doors the first day, it was like cattle came through. The floors were rumbling.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It's an amazing show.
Well, we hope to see you there.
No, definitely.
Yeah, so we hope to see you at Harrisburg at the Great American Outdoor Show. If you're there, you'd probably be in the T. Allen custom rod booth.
Yep, usually right over there by the lunker tank.
Yeah.
Right by the trough.
Yeah, right by the trough.
Well, we hope to see you there, and
I hope so.
Well, you have another month and a half until that time, and keep catching those big trout and redfish and everything we don't have up here. So I don't say that in an envious way at all.
Not at all.
It didn't sound like it.
No.
I do have I have a couple friends up north, and I have been known just to inbox them some pictures because I know they're at work or something or having a bad day. So I shoot them one of them bad boys, and it usually they say something that we can't say on the air on the way back, but we still stay friends. That's
there
all
you
go.
It lifts their spirits in one way or another.
Yes, it does.
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the time, Mike. We appreciate it. I knew it was going to be fun, and you didn't let me down, bud. Thanks.
That's for sure.
You guys are welcome. I hope I shed some light on some of this stuff to you guys, and I wish everybody has a good Christmas and a good New Year, and stay safe up there.
Thank you. Same to you and your family.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Okay, we'll see you.
Take it easy now.
See that, Stevie?
Yeah.
Told you it was a good one, bud.
Yeah. Yeah, that was way overdue.
Yeah.
So, where can they find us, Ryan?
Well, as always, they can find us at RuttenRiverPursuits.com. Be sure to check us out on all of the social media properties, of course, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the YouTube page. Check that out. Just look for Rutten River Pursuits Podcast. And the podcast itself, always available on Apple Podcast and on Spotify.
I love Spotify.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Boys, is another great week.
Sure was.
Thank you both.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys.
We'll see you.
See you. Coming, yeah.
So I says, I heard banjos and all kinds of weird stuff. And I got out of there. I'll tell you what. Can I do that? And I
It
said,
took them
"Absolutely."
5 fish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Stevie
No,
would have
it's like
short drift you after
Dude,
that first
the
one.
first one I'd have been.
stubborn, very stubborn.